Okay, the next part of what we do for this class in week 2, or the lecture 2 of these series, is going over the basics of Flutter and Dart. But before we get into the basics, it's nowadays very essential to learn how to do the programming with some AI tools. And we're going to use one that's pretty good for Dart and Visual Studio coding, and that's through something called Copilot, GitHub Copilot. So you go to the menu, go to extensions, and then you're going to look for something called GitHub Copilot and make sure coming from GitHub. And so look for this item. It's either there's two parts. There's the GitHub Copilot and the GitHub Copilot chat. We really want the Copilot chat. So let's install that one. This might require you to restart Visual Studio. Okay. Now that we have that installed, I'm going to come down here to this little menu on the bottom left where it says sign in to GitHub to use GitHub Copilot. So we're going to use that. And it's going to open up this window to sign in to Copilot. So we're going to sign in. And so it's been authorized here. Okay. So we're going to close this window here. Now we see that we have both GitHub and GitHub Copilot chat. Now, if you open up the button on the far right top corner, where there's 4 buttons, where there's one that opens up a right side panel. And then we'll see something like this. And once we have this set up, then we know that we have Copilot chat set up for our coding sessions. So what we're going to do is cover the basic parts of Flutter. And Flutter really comes in 2 parts. Okay. First is the Dart language. Okay. And the other part is the Flutter framework that works on top of Dart that allows the building of the applications for mobile, web, or desktop. And so the first part is that we need to cover and maybe get some familiarity with the Dart language. So Dart language, as you read more about it in this week's reading assignment, you will see things like primitives. So there's basic primitives. So there's basic types. Okay, so there's int. As you can see here, as I type my comments, Copilot chat actually provides samples of some basic types here. And so here you can see that I can define an int of type A of value, double, a Boolean, and a string, and then a list, and then a map. And these are all different types here. And the other part is that when we have a Dart project like this, when we create it, it sets up all these other code as part of our Flutter starter app. But the part that is really the starting point of our Flutter application is here. And you can see that this is just a regular function versus this data member. This is a function inside of a class. So this is a data member. And then you'll see something like this, which is a variable inside of a class definition. So this will be like a object-oriented type of programming paradigm with a data instance, a data member within a class. So if you're familiar with object-oriented programming like Java or C++, Dart leverages that type of programming concepts and uses the Dart language, and then there are loops and controls. So loops and controls. Okay, so there's like if then else, right, like that, or there's a switch, or there is for while loop statement. So here's a for, and here's a while, and then here's a do. Okay, so these are the different basic building blocks of the Dart language. So again, Dart is the basic language underneath of Flutter, and then Flutter then provides other things like these stateless widgets, the state management that you see here, state. And then we also see other types of Flutter concepts like scaffold, and these are sort of other built-in objects, part of the Flutter library. So that would be the um, the basic building blocks of a Flutter Dart program. And you can build a Flutter command line program. So if I were to, let's say, write something called calculate tip, sorry, or calculate tip like this. So here I could have a function, so that void calculate tip, okay? So if I were to run this, so if I have a void main here, and then I can calculate the tip, so I can call this function and I could run this here. I could click on that run here. Oops, sorry. I'm going to stop this because it's going to try to run it inside of a iOS app. So what I'm going to do instead is go to a terminal and then say Dart calc tip. Oops, lib calc tip. There we go. So we're running now a console program at the Dart level. And you see here that we're using print. And if we were to change this, let's say to debug print, which is a valid way to print out something in a Flutter application. If you ever see something like this in your Flutter program in Dart, where you've got some squiggly red lines, it means it's got a compile issue, can't figure it out. If you mouse over it, you'll see that VS Code is giving you some ways to sort of fix this. So if you mouse over it and then this little pop-up comes out and then you click on quick fix, it'll give you some options, possible options of how to fix this. So if I select, let's say, material, what's going to happen is it's going to pull in this Flutter library and called material and let me run it. But if I write it from here like this, it's going to give me a problem. The problem is that once I run it like this and I incorporate a function like debug print, this now becomes a Flutter application rather than just a regular command, rather than a regular Dart program. So debug print is part of the Flutter library, and you would not be able to run it as a regular Dart program. So just change this back to print, and then we'll be able to just stick to Dart. And here we remove this, and we don't rely on the Flutter library or framework, but we just rely on just Dart. Okay, like that. Other things, like I said, is the structures, right? So there's structures like the classes, um, and you can see that there's also possible ways to make things with a parent-child relationship. So here, this is the child of the parent class stateless widget. Okay, that's one particular hierarchy there. And this is another one here. And we can do similar kind of, so if I say vehicle, so I went ahead and created the vehicle class and put some data members. And then I also created a subclass of the vehicle. It's called passenger car, and added some um, data members as well. Now, what you can see here in vehicle and in this kind of Dart programming is that you can see the naming convention. You see that when we have a class name, that we capitalize the name of the class and we put it in a file that sort of matches that. And then we see the data members. We see the different kind of data types. And something to keep in mind is these question marks. And we're going to cover this in more detail later, but it just refers that this particular data member can be a null value. When you see something without the null value, that means that you don't need to handle a null case. But there's some um, there's more. Well, I guess I can make this one a non-null here. And something to also keep in mind about Visual Studio Code and with using Dart and Flutter with it. And that is the naming convention, and that Visual Studio Code will give you warnings and errors. Um, so for example, when a data member is not named the correct lower camel case, it will give you that kind of warning in Visual Studio Code. So let me just remove this. I just left it there for lecture purposes. But you can also see that in this class, that inside the vehicle parent class, we have two methods, data member methods. One start engine, the other one stop engine. And then in the the subclass or child class, you can see that the function members are overridden. And so here you can see that I put a little debug print statement here, passenger engine started versus when vehicle engine started. And then when I create a test class to test out this set of hierarchy, and you see that I've created one of type vehicle that instantiates a passenger class, and then I create the other one, another passenger car type, and I assign it to a passenger car. And then here for car, I can um, I can just call the various methods on that. But here you can see something here that fuel type for sports car here, fuel type is actually a data member of passenger car. And so fuel type, if you just use it without this part right here, it will not know what this is because a a sports car does not know what fuel type, because the fuel type is really only inside of actually I just moved it to the vehicle. So let me go back to there and put this with car, just car. car, and then inside of passenger car, I'll make reference to the body style. So car, which is here, and that changes back to sports car. So sports car doesn't know what body style is because sports car is of type here, vehicle. And even though it is an instance of passenger car and it will take care of the correct method with overrides here, that this particular data type doesn't know what body type is. So I have to then say as um, passenger car, then it will know how to resolve this data member. So if I run this, you'll see all the print statements here work correctly, and that the um, passenger vehicle or passenger car or vehicle start engine starts. So now that we've covered classes, um, parent and child class, um, we also talked about being able to have different kinds of data types like these and different kind of data structures, and then some control loops. And then we also talked about how not just classes, but you can have just regular functions that are not part of classes, and that these functions, for example, this particular Dart class can be invoked directly on the command line for any kind of scripting tool that you want to build. Okay, so that's what we'll cover for just this week too.